Hello, it's Kath here, and I'm with Matthew Bauer, who's the president of the Acupuncture Now Foundation. And today we're going to talk about communicating with patients, something that Matthew has had over 40 years' experience doing as a full-time acupuncturist. And the aim of the Acupuncture Now Foundation is to act as a PR agency to really get our message out there. So thank you, Matthew, for setting time aside to meet with you today.
Happy to. Thank you for having me, Kath.
And so my first question then, and this is one of the wonderful things, you've been an acupuncturist for a very long time. What I'd love to hear from you is how has your conversation with patients changed? From when you first started telling people what acupuncture is and how it works, do you still convey the same message, or do you use a different type of language now?
Well, that's a great question, and I hadn't really thought about that for a while, but I can tell you that yes, my message has changed over the years. Probably it took me about 5 years to start to realize the direction that I started to bring my explanations into, and then maybe another 5 years before it really crystallized that, gee, this is the way you need to explain it. And then maybe another 10 years or 20 years or so of refining that message. But basically the difference was that, earlier on, I would talk to people much more about Chinese medicine theory, about qi and meridians and, yin and yang and all this sort of thing. And which, of course, I still completely believe and support and think it's vastly important for all of us practicing this to be very familiar with. But I began to change that over time to zero in on way more like that's the details of the trees versus the bigger forest. And the bigger forest, and the message I always try to convey to people is that acupuncture helps the body to better heal itself or to regulate itself. And that is something I think all of us in this field just take for granted, like a not important thing. But it is, in my mind, it is vastly important to the average person or even a medical doctor, because the idea that you could have a medical intervention, have a medical therapy whose sole goal is to spark the body's own resources to help it better manage itself, that's not really something that's considered even a viable possibility. So it's not even in people's heads that might be the way acupuncture works.
And so go on, tell me more about this model, this explanation of, do patients then question you further and say, well, how does it help the body regulate itself?
Well, I've developed several different analogies over the years, and I do try to tailor them based on the individual. And there's different ways I have of conveying this. Like, for example, one of my analogies is to say that what I'm talking about, how acupuncture sparks the body's own resources, is can be thought of kind of like if you have your lawn at your house and you have automatic sprinklers and you're watering your lawn and it's staying green, and then you get into a long hot spell and now your lawn starts to turn brown. If you put more minutes on your sprinklers and you put more water on the yard, it can start to bring the grass back to green again. And that's what I'm talking about, saying that acupuncture sparks the body. I tell my patients, we should consistently be able to put more minutes on your sprinklers. We're going to put more water on your yard. What we don't know and what we want to watch is to say, okay, is that enough to bring the lawn back green? It doesn't always happen overnight, so you can't just do one treatment, turn the sprinklers up more minutes, and then look at it the next day and say, oh, it's not green, it's not working. And also, when you think about that situation, you may have some patch of ground that's actually died out, and now no matter how much water you put on it, it won't come back green. And that is kind of the limit of acupuncture. There are some conditions that go beyond what the body's resources can possibly heal, and those are conditions that we're not going to be effective of having any significant impact in. So that's an example of one analogy that I've used over the years, and depending on the type of patient, people seem to get that. That's a simple thing that most people have seen in their own life experience that helps them understand what we're talking about how acupuncture works, why it may take a while to be able to assess if it's really working or not, and why it may be that there may be some situations that we're not going to be successful for, but that's what we're going to find out when we do the initial series of treatments.
And I like the fact it's moving away from the mechanic structure that the body is a machine that bits break off. The fact that you're using an analogy of regeneration, you're dealing with nature, something that's naturally going to generate
That's right.
itself given the right conditions, and the body being the same. So what are some other
That's right.
analogies that you use? What would you use perhaps if you were talking to someone more scientific, another health professional or a medical doctor?
Yes, well, of course, we can always refer to what we tend to call mechanism studies in acupuncture. I always say that it's a kind of oxymoron to say the mechanisms of acupuncture, because I don't believe acupuncture works in a mechanistic way, but that's the terminology people use. But we know from these mechanism studies, we can point to all sorts of studies about how acupuncture changes the body's chemistry this way or that. Like, for example, we know that acupuncture can cause the body to release different pain modulating chemistry, like endorphin compounds or all of these sort of things. We know that it can cause the production of anti-inflammatory chemistry and shift hormones and things like that. But actually, what I'm really excited about is, and that I've started to use, this is pretty hot off the presses. This is something that I've just begun to use in the last year or even less than that. And that is, there's some wonderful research that's been done by a team of scientists out of University of California in Irvine, and which is not too far from me here. And that research is actually a team of researchers that has been working together for over 20 years now. And it's led by a cardiologist named John Longhurst. And Dr. Longhurst's team has been studying acupuncture's impact on the cardiovascular system for 20 years. They've done a series of studies, several studies over the years. Most of the studies are animal studies, but they also then turn around and do the similar studies on humans. And so a lot of their studies, though, is focused on the role of acupuncture in treating high blood pressure, its impact on blood pressure, and especially high blood pressure. So what I explain, and this I use with general public, but it's especially good to use with medical doctors and the like, because I think it does more to really emphasize acupuncture's ability to help the body to better manage itself. And that is, they first of all did studies to find out that certain acupuncture points are quite reliable to lower high blood pressure. And once they realized that this could be replicated, that it was quite reliable, that they would see better than 70% effectiveness in lowering high blood pressure. They were then able to contrast that to other acupuncture points that didn't have nearly that kind of impact on high blood pressure. So they were able to use those other points as control points, because that's one of the real problems we have with acupuncture research is a lot of times the sham acupuncture points may actually be doing what the active acupuncture points are trying to do, so they're not good controls at all. As far as I know, this research team may be the first one who actually went through a protocol to determine how they could know that these points are good control points. So that's something that medical doctors and scientists, everything should know about, is that this team points out the problem of having control points that actually are active instead of non-active, and how they manage that in their research. And then, of course, the other thing about their research is monitoring blood pressure is a completely objective measurement. It's not like subjective pain control or some other symptoms where we rely on the patients to describe how they feel. This is done by a machine. And actually, I met with them and we went over this, and they told me that the actual machine that they developed to do this doesn't even have a human to do the monitoring. It's all set up automated wise, so there's not even any human error in how the blood pressure was measured. And so anyway, so they do these studies to show that these acupuncture points will lower high blood pressure. But what I love about what they did with further studies is they also did the same points on subjects that had low blood pressure. And what they found was the same points raised low blood pressure. So the culmination of all their studies showed here's the same set of acupuncture points that will lower high blood pressure, will raise low blood pressure, and will leave normal blood pressure alone. So I think this is the most significant acupuncture research ever undertaken, and this is over many years. It's a culmination of many studies, because to my mind, this perfectly explains what acupuncture does, not just for blood pressure, but everywhere in the body. The same points could make your body do two completely different things. Lower something that's too high and raise up something that's too low, because that's balancing yin and yang, right? That's the whole, the basic theory behind this. And here we have some extremely well done studies that demonstrate this dynamic of how acupuncture points don't make the body do what we want them to do, like, oh, these are the points that will bring down blood pressure, whether it needs to be brought down or not. These are the points that help your body's self-management systems to realize that they are not doing such a good job of managing something. And by highlighting that, the body can then make a better effort to either bring down something that's too high or bringing up something that's too low, even with the exact same points.
Indeed, and look, it's such a wonderful explanation. And you know, have you found that medical doctors are more willing to engage in those conversations once you can relate in those terms?
Well, yeah, and honestly, other than doing something and to try to talk about acupuncture's ability to measure and monitor it. I mean, to help the body's ability to measure and monitor itself. I'm not invited to doctor meetings to lecture them, but I can tell you that as far as the general public goes, I do use this explanation now for my patients. And I was just thinking about this morning and thinking about doing this talk, that virtually every single patient that I explain this to, which I do have some doctor patients, by the way, but every single patient I explain this to, it just absolutely blows their minds. I mean, this is like the idea that the same point could do completely different things based on what is happening, what the needs are in the body. That idea that you could do something that literally helps the body to better see what it needs to do itself, that is something that nobody's ever heard of before. So, I mean, I've been telling people that for 30 plus years, but now we have some actual research that's done both on animals and humans, and as a completely objective measurement that shows that the same acupuncture points can cause the body to do 180-degree different things. And this is something that is just not in the culture of what medicine is about. So I think this is the really big educational hurdle that we have to get over, because it's not like this is something that's thought about, talked about, that it's in our culture, that it's in either the technical side of medicine or in the popular culture. So it's not like we could say, yes, of course, one way to treat disease is to combat the disease or blunt the symptoms with outside mechanical kind of fixes, or you could do things to help the body to better realize what it needs to do to manage itself. We don't that's not really thought of as an either or proposition. If it was, it would be very easy. We could just tell people, no, we're not this mechanical fix. We're the helping the body to help itself fix. And they would say, okay. But people have never been subjected to the idea that you could have a detailed, complex medical intervention that has been refined, over literally thousands of years in our case, to do one thing, and that is to better highlight to the body what it needs to do to better manage itself. So that's the, as far as I'm concerned, that's the huge hurdle we have to get over, is to convince people that such a thing is possible. And that is what acupuncture is all about. Once you get over that hurdle, and I've seen it happen thousands of times now with my patients, once we get that in their head, that's what we're going to be doing here, is trying to highlight where the body is out of balance, so the body can figure out itself how to bring itself back into balance. Now we're on the same page, and now I can discuss with my patients every aspect of the whole treatment process. Now their expectations are where they should be, because now they understand how this really works in a technical, even if we want to call it mechanical way. Now we understand each other, so that then helps us to manage every aspect of their treatment process, and it also helps them to explain it to others. And although it's difficult, and I've had people tell me, they try to explain it to other people, and it's like, this is some concept they've never heard before, so they find it difficult to explain to other people. And that's something I think we really need to work on, is giving our patients resources so that they could access those to help convince other people. Because many of our patients will find that, they tell people all the time, you should try acupuncture, and then they meet this kind of resistance. And that would be something I think would be wonderful for us to work on, is to develop the resources, not just for acupuncturists to explain to patients, but really for patients to explain to other potential patients.
Indeed. And I mean, this leads me very nicely onto my question for you about the Acupuncture Now Foundation. And, in setting up a global PR agency for the acupuncture profession, how do you see those messages getting out there?
Well, that was the mission of the Acupuncture Now Foundation, and continues to be the mission, is that those of us, and you were an essential part of that, Kath, that formed this organization. The idea was that we had this hurdle to get over about credibility and just explaining what this is really all about, and that there needed to be a concentrated, multi-year, multi-pronged effort to try to bring down the barriers of misunderstanding. And the hope was that if somebody really tried to develop an organization who would zero in on that subject matter, how do we help people to understand what this is really about, that there would be support within the acupuncture community to help that to happen. And what's happened with the ANF, we're now coming into our third year. In November, I think we launched with you, Kath, November 2014. There's been a lot of support in spirit, and there has been some financial support that has helped us to keep going to this point. But what I'm really excited about is there's getting to be more support in action. I mean, we've had support in action. We've had critical people, key people that have stepped in and have been working with us from the beginning, really. And I'm so grateful to them. But now we're starting to see more people get what our mission is about, and it connects with them. So we're just finalizing the formation of our first 2 local chapters. So A&F International, we try to be the big tent organization that works on an international level, but it was always the plan to have local chapters. So we have formed a local chapter for Australia, and we just got word that we have some volunteers, some great people step up to start to form a new chapter in New Zealand. And so I'm really looking forward to working with these volunteers, and I think they're going to help us really take the A&F to the next level. And in addition to that, and one of the things that this group got excited about is we have been working on filming a documentary about acupuncture, because I firmly believe that the best way to really explain what acupuncture can do is to give a microphone to our patients to let them explain what it's meant for them. And so that's what we're trying to do with our film, Getting to the Point. We're almost finished with our first segment, which is focuses on an acupuncturist that works in a children's hospital here in California, who has been there for 15 years and has made significant impact in countless people's lives. And these are children with very serious illnesses, including but not limited to cancer, but especially a lot of cancer patients. And so we're going to shine a light on what the truth of the potential that acupuncture Chinese medicine services can make and has been making in this top children's hospital. And I think people are going to be really impressed by it. So there is really building enthusiasm about people wanting to see this information, this film get out there. What we're looking to do now, we hope to raise the money to do 4 or 5 segments and to weave them together into a feature-length documentary. But what we're looking to do now is we've come so far with the children's hospital segment. We are going to be putting out laying out a plan to put out that segment. And we hope that when people see this segment, it's an incredibly important subject matter in itself, but then more people will get the idea, gee, we shouldn't stop there. We should keep going. We do have other segments. We have approval from the key people that we need to help us film these segments. We have other segments lined up, basically ready to go, but it's just a matter of funding. So we hope that when we put this first segment out on the Children's Hospital, it will connect with more people, and that it'll help us to raise the funds to do the other segments. And we may just release them a segment at a time, like a series. Getting to the Point series. And then once we have 4 or 5 of these, we may then go back and weave them together into that feature-length documentary. But this is one of the big projects we have that people are excited about. We're very near our fundraising goal. We only have about $5,000 more to raise to be able to finish the Children's Hospital segment, and we should be able to have the entire thing finished by the end of this year. And we announced it last year, so we would have loved if we could have raised the money to have done all the segments. But we are going to be delivering with deep gratitude for those people that have contributed to this filming fundraising drive. We are going to bring a highly professionally done, incredibly heartfelt sort of story about acupuncture making impact on children, with serious cancer diagnosis. So we're going to be delivering on our promise to deliver a wonderful video.
Indeed. And I think on behalf of the acupuncture profession, thank you for your vision to see that is something that's going to be achieved. And as you say, it's a huge accolade for the Acupuncture Now Foundation to have set out a goal like that and to be within 12 months being able to deliver. So, thank you so much for sharing with us today your view of how better to communicate acupuncture to patients. And I certainly think that we have come so far in the last 40 years to think of that if we continue at this exponential rate, that there's an incredible possibility for an integrated healthcare system. Do you have, in my final question for you, do you have an end vision of what you'd like to see in primary care as a legacy for all the work that you're doing now?
Well, I say, look, the thing is about acupuncture, I think acupuncture is truly unique in all the world of healthcare. I mean, we know it's well over 2,000 years old. Nobody really knows exactly how old it is. And yet here in modern time, it actually holds the promise to shore up where our medical system has its greatest weaknesses. I like to say that the strengths and weaknesses of these two approaches, whether you try to fix the body from the outside in like a mechanic fixing a machine, or whether you grease the wheels of the body's own self-healing systems, which is another analogy that I use, which is what acupuncture does, that the strengths and weaknesses are the mirror opposites of each other. So the strengths of acupuncture Chinese medicine tends to be the weaknesses of modern medicine, and vice versa. So we absolutely should be working with them together, triaging patients of figuring out, oh, for this situation, you really do need a mechanical fix, or for this situation, you're much better off helping the body to heal itself. I mean, that is what this is all about. And that's where we need to get to, is a recognition that what we offer is exactly what is so necessary today, because it is the weak spot of the mechanical approach. There is no doubt that acupuncture is one of the, if not the most powerful methods to spark the body's own resources. So this is something that should be absolutely welcome with open arms. It is something that should be hailed as a tremendous advancement of the whole medical system. So I think all of us that are involved with this know this to be the case. So what's the problem? The problem is the education, right? The problem is getting creative in how we get this accurate and honest, truthful information out there to people. It's an information education hurdle that we have to get over. So that's what I hope the legacy of the ANF is that, whether, and I've said this from the very beginning, whether it's the ANF doing it or somebody else steps in and does it, that's the important part, is that the job gets done. So we've got to come together and figure out how to get this education job done. We have to get creative about it. I think film is one of the most pervasive ways there is. We've got a great filmmaker working with us. We've got great subject matter. So I hope more people will get behind us and let's make this happen.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Matt. And that's a wonderful call to action. Anybody watching today who is motivated by hearing what the potential is if we better communicate to our patients and our other colleagues, then please join with the Acupuncture Now Foundation and show your support and volunteer, sign up, donate, whatever that means to you to be able to get behind this campaign. So please do share. And thanks again, Matt Bauer, for your time, and good luck to the ANF for those wonderful achievements.
And thank you for helping to make this happen, Kath. Bye, everybody.
I hope you enjoyed this free webinar. Please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel and please share on social media. The world will be a better place when more people know about the benefits of acupuncture.